What's going on, guys? Yeah, I kind of missed over the weekend, so I'm kind of picking it up back where I left off. I'm gonna probably try to make this into two videos, I guess. I'm not sure. I want to continue doing Korean stuff, but like I said in my last video, I kind of want to have some break between doing more lessons with myself and actually just kind of talking about something that's interesting. Um, yeah. I want to kind of follow up kind of some stuff that I talked about last week when I first kind of came back. Actually, I'm going to move this over here a bit. I think that'd be fine for today. Since I'm not doing Korean stuff, I usually move my camera over just a little bit and basically to offset for the screen that would be like over here, up here. But that's not the case today. So, anyways, I hope y'all are doing fine. I'm gonna remove myself so I don't end up looking over there instead of the camera. Hope y'all are doing fine. Yeah, I think last week was kind of an interesting go at it because it was kind of like this low moment that I was going through. Now, the Korean stuff was fun for me. Actually, kind of gave me some boost. But before that, when I was talking about like Christianity and stuff like that, like talking about it was mainly because it's just been kind of on my mind a lot about what it means to me, and at the same time, really just trying to kind of, um, unfold what it means to me, and really understand what it is that I believe, that type of thing. So, this week's a little bit different. It's Monday now, and I just wanted to. I definitely have some better attitude than I did last week, so that's kind of good. I feel better about that, uh, and yeah, I'm not really sure what my plan was for this video. So like most of my videos, just kind of tag along. It's just me just spouting out a bunch of shit. Um, I'm gonna continue using the words like shit and stuff like that because I'm not monetized or making any money from this, so YouTube can't really stop me, so I don't care. Um, yeah, it just kind of feels good. I will say one thing I got from last week that it just feels good to kind of spill out some thoughts onto a video. Now, you might think like, well, why not just share something like this with your friend or something like that? But to be honest with you, sometimes a camera doesn't talk back, so that's kind of one nice thing about it. Now, I'm not saying that I don't like talking to people about whatever I'm going through. It's just in the instance where I just really need to vent and stuff like that, it's best for me to talk in front of a camera. Um, yeah, so last week I was just really just kind of getting through some stuff. I kind of had a change in schedule with my work, anyways, so it was kind of throwing me off a little bit. It wasn't so bad, It's like I feel really thankful for the job that I have, but at the same time, like anytime you switch up something that's from your normal life, yeah, it obviously throws you a curveball, and it's like you kind of got to reorient yourself a little bit. And what it's definitely done is that it's forced me to actually go to bed early and wake up earlier. I'm a bit of a night owl, as some of you may know. Mainly, honestly, I became a night owl since I moved to Korea because it's quite honestly one of the ways that I can communicate with my friends back home most efficiently. Um, and so that's kind of why every time I talk to my friends, they're always like, "Why do you stay up so late?" It's like, well, because who do you think you're talking to right now? Because otherwise you wouldn't be able to talk to me. So that's kind of a thing. It's like you may think it's weird, but it's also weird is not being able to talk to your friend. So yeah, so I just consciously made the choice that I wanted to be able to stay in contact with my friends, and that was one of the ways I had to do it, is being able to stay up late. Like um, I'm talking like 3 or 4 at night, that type of thing. So, um, yeah, that's kind of what my sleep schedule really looks like. So, yeah, it's kind of one of those things where, um, I'm kind of adapting now that my job kind of forced me to wake up earlier, and it's some part of me wants to go to that type of normal lifestyle, like waking up at like 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock, something like that, and and going through that. But I know that if I do that, that it's like I'm sacrificing any sort of time that I get to do or talk with my friends or something like that. Because the reality is the friends I talk to the most are the ones who kind of wake up early on U.S. time, specifically Western Standard Time, or Pacific Time is the Pacific Standard Time. So in that regard, it's really convenient because like when they wake up, it's like, I want to play video games, and at nighttime maybe they're usually out doing something, so I don't really have that opportunity. So um, yeah, that's kind of what my sleep schedule, my work schedule looks like. But that, all that being said, um, I do want to kind of change some things. One thing that I want to kind of talk about a little bit that I haven't really talked about in any vlog that is kind of weighed on me, and I figure I might as well just. This is kind of my. This is kind of my vlog for trying to be as honest as possible, not just with the camera, but with myself. And the reality of the things are is like one thing I want to do here while I'm here is I need to make more friends, and I think that's one of the big motivations that I've had while learning Korean. So it's like well, there's a couple of motivations. I shouldn't say the biggest motivation, but the one of the biggest. Um, it's like my motivations are like having new friends, getting a job, well, a job besides teaching, I mean, and just having some autonomy. The reality is like when I go out and I have to do something important, I need my wife along because if it's whether it's government work or something like that, it's like I kind of have to do that with her because um, she's obviously she's Korean, so she can speak, and that makes things convenient for me to have her help me with it. But of course, I don't want to be that type of burden all the time. So, um, my goal is to get to this point where I can speak um, fluently enough to communicate semi-complex semi-complex things, and hopefully from that point, I can build another layer. So it's like that. It's not like I'm just like wanting to get to this certain point and stop. It's like my next goal is to be able to communicate. And after I'm being able to communicate, I want to add on to that by adding complexity to it. So, it's obviously a difficult challenge, and I even noticed some of that stuff last week when I was going through some of the Korean stuff. Um, is that there's a lot of complicated stuff to go over in Korean. And not like overly complicated to the point where I can't handle it, but it does weigh on you quite a bit when you're like, well, these concepts are also different. So, and that with that being said, it's like I wasn't really ever great at English growing up. I know that comes as a kind of a weird surprise considering I'm an English teacher, but yeah, I had to take like special classes for English because I was actually behind in my class compared to the rest of my classmates. So I had to kind of take these reading workshop classes to get my reading skill to the level of everybody else. And it's still I still consider myself compared to other English speakers, like I kind of lack in the reading department, mainly because I never practiced that much. Because growing up, I never read books, and I read more now, and that's a really good practice for me. But in the past, I never really read a lot of books. Like I only read sometimes if I was really really interested in it, and even then, it would take quite a while to even finish the book. So. I'm not saying that like I need to be a fast reader or something like that, but it would have been helpful to get through some content. And that's kind of one of those things, one of the reasons why I've always been so deterred by reading is like this revolving door of like, okay, I know I'm a slow reader, so that makes wanting to start a bigger book really, um, it, it's really discouraging to want to start anything of large content because it's like I know it's going to take me a long time. And I'm a distracted person naturally, so sometimes I'll even quit halfway through a book. Like that's all, honestly one of my bigger problems is I never finish books. And I'm trying to fix that with Jordan Peterson's book that I'm currently reading now, but even that's brought its challenges to me. But I think there's such a craving I have for something out of that book that it makes me want to actually read it more, um, which is good. I'm glad that I'm doing that. Having the desire to read versus not having any desire whatsoever, that does help. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit background on my reading background. So that being said, it's like with Korean, I can imagine that I'll have some of the same struggles because as it stands right now, I'm being able to understand Korean when I'm listening to it, but being able to speak it's really difficult. And honestly, that's just because I'm not getting enough practice. And naturally, I just don't think I'm as good at that type of thing. But which is also ironic though, because obviously I felt like that's always been one of my strengths in English is speaking. So it is a little bit of it's a little bit of a frustration of sorts to you know not be able to speak when that was something that came so naturally to me when I was younger in English. So that's kind of my step forward, and that's why I wanted to start making these videos. And it's been really helpful so far. Oh, well, actually, we have a lot more time. Actually, when I'm recording for um, when I'm recording for Korean stuff, time seems to just kind of fly by. But this time, I'm like, I have actually extra time. Um, so that's kind of a nice thing. All right, so one thing that I was kind of going through this week, like I was saying last week, was just this constant battle of like belief. And actually, over the weekend, I kind of was able to kind of come to some peace about it, more than I've had in a long time. So usually, it's been kind of just weighing on me what it means to what it means to even be human, that type of thing. Um, so yeah, I don't think I really talked a lot about that type of aspect of that way, but yeah, that's kind of why I'm making these videos in a sense is because I'm trying to be as honest with myself as possible. And if I'm being honest with myself, I think I will start to grow more because you know what, there's so many things that I've noticed is like I can be honest with others all the time. That's actually not a problem. Being honest with others is actually rather easy in a way. Being honest with yourself is not always easy. And that's kind of a scary thing if you think about it because if I'm not honest with myself, how am I being honest with others? Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm telling the truth when I'm talking to others, but if I'm lying to myself, what I'm giving them is not necessarily true. That's a weird thing actually because it's almost like you believe it to be true when you're talking about it to other people, but in reality is you lied to yourself, and it's just kind of this whole roundabout thing. So I'm trying to fix that part of my life. Is being honest with myself and knowing what I can do, what I can't do, um, being honest with my faults, being honest with my strengths. Um, yeah, there's a lot of complexity to life, and I'm learning more of that all the time. And you might think that's just so utterly obvious, especially if you're older. You're thinking like, well, obviously, Tyler, but I don't think people really sit down to actually really think about the complexities, and that's why it kind of really weighed on me last week. Um, so what am I going to be doing this week? I'm going to be continuing doing the 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 Korean stuff. I actually really enjoyed it last week, believe it or not. Like that it was really quite a fun experience actually. I'm going to probably do some of my own study tonight and kind of refresh because over the weekend I didn't really do anything. So I'm going to refresh on some things on my own. And then tomorrow, hopefully, I'll come back a little bit more refreshed with some of the knowledge that I learned last week. I need to kind of remember some of the things I went through. So I know I learned about um, some grammatical stuff. Actually, most of the stuff I'm learning is about grammar right now rather than like vocabulary or speaking. Because number one, I don't really have anybody to speak to other than my wife. And when you can speak English, it's actually way easier just to revert to English. So we just kind of always stick with English. In this case, it's like if I want to get better at Korean, I need to be able to communicate with somebody in Korean. Um, yeah, and a lot of times it's not always fun to do that with your wife because obviously you want to communicate the best way you know how possible with your spouse. And that's why I think we don't really speak Korean that much. I think one day we'll probably will. I think we will. Especially if there's some concepts that she wants to talk about and wants to talk about it freely instead of in English. So that'll be one of those things in the future. But yeah, I hope I didn't really um, I hope I didn't really like lose anybody last week just because I was doing the Korean stuff. I hope that somebody finds it interesting. I'm not betting that like my channel will explode or something like that. It's just more like I just kind of hope that there's someone out there who might take some interest, like I'm interested in Korean, at like the same level. I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there who have actually more interest than I do, but I know there's plenty of people who have quite a quite less interest, quite less. Okay, you know what I mean, like just less interest in the language. So, and that's kind of the one thing about life. I'm gonna go off on a tangent on this. Is that like you always want to find the person who kind of balances you out, or at least has some similarity to you. It's like almost like you want to find somebody who's similar to you, but with like a different temperament, and that's kind of one of those things that's really hard to find if you really think about it. It's like you can find people who are like-minded as you. You can find people who have same interests as you. You can find people and like almost all the same things as you. But finding somebody with those things and with the same temperament, or I mean, like with complementary temperament, is actually really difficult. Um, because a lot of times you'll find that you either have the same temperament, which is fine in its own way. It's you can relate to them very easily, but you actually there's no like balance about it. It's like you can't really, like I said, can't really compliment yourselves on the things that you have or don't have. Because if you both have the same things that you struggle with and the same things that you're good at, it's like that's really not good for both of you. And I've had that with some friends in the past, and love those friends. It's just all I think it's just kind of self evident when you realize it. The reason why you don't like communicate with them as much as you do is because it's like, well, more or less we're the same. So it's like, why would I just? I mean, it'd be like hanging out with myself all the time. So what's the good in that? So finding people with different temperament is very interesting, a different personality. Um, I mean, even same personality, but just different temperament would be fun. That's actually a really, really nice feature. Um, so actually, I'm really looking forward to this week in particular because I just got the week off. I'm not the week, but I got Wednesday off, which is nice. Wednesday is Korea's Independence Day. So for you guys, for all of you who don't know, in Korea was annexed by Japan during the war, actually even before World War II, um, and they were they were kind of like a satellite state for upwards of like 20 years, maybe more, 30 years. Anyways, a long time coming. I mean, a long time of just kind of that type of oppression. Um, Obviously brings about a holiday. So it actually I was a little bit. I was talking to my wife tonight about like, what do you guys do on your Independence Day? Because last year when I was working, I didn't have this day off because my boss decided not to take the day off on that day. But this time I do at my new job, so I don't have to go to work on Wednesday. But I kind of brought up the question, like, what do you do on Independence Day, waifu? And she's like, not much. And I was a little bit shocked by that, actually, because in the U.S. we have such a really big Independence Day. It was such a big deal for us, but it's kind of strange that it's not here, because I mean it's kind of a big deal. You were oppressed by a certain group of people for a very long time, and then you gain independence from that. And I just thought, besides just putting out a flag, I thought there would be more celebration about it. But I guess not. Maybe it's just not something the younger generation does so often or something. But they put more emphasis on like their, Lunar New Year and Chuseok, which is their Thanksgiving. Their Thanksgiving holiday. So Thanksgiving and Lunar New Year, big holidays in the year. So yeah, whatever. It didn't make sense to me just because I'm like, I felt like that would have been really kind not of higher value, but almost as the same value, just because it really showed like the perseverance of like Korean people. Considering it was like 30 years, like Japan tried to kind of completely just dismantle everything that was related to Korean. And it wasn't just Korea, it was in all the states that Japan had taken over. It was like there's just been a lot of bad blood. There's been a lot of bad blood between Japan and Korea. So it is quite interesting to see that it was like a holiday like this is celebrated so meekly. That being said, it is kind of interesting to see the transition of things, of the different generations, how they view the kind of tense relationship between the two countries. Obviously, usually rule of thumb goes like this: the younger generation of both countries, of Japan and Korea, are usually pretty cool with each other, but the older generations are when you're going to see a lot of opposition to each other because it's fresh in the minds of those people. Um, but I think that'll change too. So, actually, in all reality, in the hopes, during like this type of Independence Day, I would hope that people kind of reflect on this type of thing and you know try to find some way to have peace between each other. Because I'm not saying like there's plenty of things I can think of that specifically Japan could do to make things a lot better for themselves, and they choose not to do it, which is a bit crazy to me in a lot of ways. But at the same time, it's like I hope that there can be some way that these two countries who are very close to each other, which can be a valuable asset in any way, that they can come together in some kind of near future, with kind of all debts paid off and that type of thing. Which, like I said, I don't really see any portion that Korea has that Korea owes Japan, but usually the other way around is that Japan kind of needs to get their shit together and you know get on their knees and apologize, that type of thing. As an American, it's kind of an interesting situation because most of the time Americans are kind of rather sympathetic to Japan in some way, and that's a bit strange. And I'm just as much to blame about that growing up. I was very sympathetic towards it, but I think it's a lot to do with the fact that a lot of the culture, I was kind of into a lot of the culture growing up too. So I had watched some type of like anime or something like that, some Japanese animation like Yu-Gi-Oh or Pokemon or Digimon or anything like that related to Japan. So actually, their culture was just kind of heavily, kind of always present when I was a child. So I think there's some type of sympathy just due to the bombings. But then when you learn about the history, you're like, oh, eyes wide open. That's why we did that type of thing, is because they were kind of a murderous group of people for a chunk of time. Um, so yeah, that really kind of um, opened my eyes actually a couple years ago, especially when I met my wife, is because I didn't really know much about the bad blood between Korea and Japan before. until I met her, and yeah, it was a bit of a shock to me because growing up in the U.S., I think we try to view race and stuff like that very just lightly, and we don't try to get too crazy heated in debate about race and stuff like that. Race is a very sensitive subject in the U.S., so it's oftentimes people try to avoid it in some way. Um, if not, I mean, not even just about avoiding, but it's become so part of our culture to not be racist towards somebody you don't know because you don't know their story. It's just kind of that's kind of how we're growing up, is that we're always told, don't be racist, or more or less the moral of the story is like, don't judge a book by its cover. Whenever you meet somebody who looks different than you, don't immediately judge them. But a lot of that's not really tied to any bad blood that was in the past. So it was a little bit shocking to me finding out some of like the racial tension between all the Asian countries, for that matter. It's not just Japan or um, Korea. It's China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, Philippines. Like, all the Asian countries have some type of beef with each other of some type. Otherwise, they all be one nation. So, um, yeah, it is kind of interesting to see those things kind of unpack. But as a hopeful foreigner living in Korea, it's like I said, I hope there will come a time when the two countries will actually be assets to each other. They'll be allies to each other, and they can actually depend on each other. That would be a really cool thing to see. Now, that's hopeful thinking, I know, but almost like utopian style thinking. But like I said, it's a nice thought, especially when you think about some of the allies that have been in the past for America and stuff like that. Regardless of what you ever think about America, we've had our allies and we've been close to people, and because of that, it's been very good as far as relationships speaking. I mean, just in general, like Korea and America have had a really good relationship for numerous reasons I'm not going to go into, and controversial reasons I'm not going to go into, but nonetheless, it's been, a good relationship in some way. So I hope the same for other countries. Every country has its differences, and it's like you always just hope that you can work through that. Okay, I'm gonna cut this video here. I talked about a lot of random stuff today, so hope that was kind of interesting for you guys to come through. So I will be back tomorrow with more Korean stuff. So if you don't like that, shoot past the next video. Maybe I'll have something on the weekend of talking about. So I hope you guys have a good night and good day. And yeah, we'll see you again. Bye.